This is the Dreadful Podcast from TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about Lovecraft Country, Season 1, Episode 8, Jig-A-Bobo.
I want you to feel what I feel right now. Heartbroken, scared, furious, tired of feeling this way over and over. And I want you to feel alone and shameful. Because I'm here, feeling this, and you will never understand it. I want you to feel guilty for feeling safe next to you and your privilege.
Welcome back, fellow Dreadfuls, to Episode 8 of Lovecraft Country, Jig-A-Bobo. I am one of your hosts, John.
I'm your other host, Derek. Welcome back.
Yes. Surprise, police officers, don't mess with Kitty.
Absolutely. We are going to be going spoiler filled into the 8th episode of Lovecraft Country Season 1. Fun episode. This time, lots of interesting stuff going on for all the characters. First episode in a while that's been focused on everybody rather than it just being one character story this time, I think.
Yeah, and it felt as though a lot of different threads back in Chicago were coming together. Mm-hmm. We don't see Hippolyta in this episode. Kind of still assuming she's stuck, or she's decided to remain, or she is stuck, yes, behind the rift of time and space. But certainly it feels like a lot of the different elements that have been happening in Chicago are coming together here, with Ruby, Christina, Leti, Atticus, Montrose, all the spells and magic of the Sons of Adam and the Ancient Order, as well as then getting a bit more of a defocused episode here, on the basis of that relatively chilling, final shot of the last episode where her comic book is, next to the dead police officer, with the blood pooling around it. So yes, really interesting episode. It took a while for me, I have to say, to kind of sort of get accustomed to it, just because it felt, as you say, much more ensemble rather than focusing specifically like we have in the last few episodes on, for example, Hippolyta, and Jaya in the episode before. Yeah,
and Ruby.
And Ruby the episode before that. Yeah. So there was a lot going on, a lot of toing and froing between the different characters.
Well, that is definitely something we've learned from Lovecraft Country. You have no idea what's coming when you turn on your episode of the show, really. No idea what's going to be presented to you straight away, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go into it, just a reminder, this is the Dreadful Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. You can head on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com. Please rate us, subscribe to us, leave a review on any good or evil podcast catcher of your choice. Sharing the podcast with your friends, family, and dare I say it, your supernatural ghosts that may haunt you, is, of course, sharing the love.
Yeah, we don't mind who they are as long as they can subscribe to the podcast.
Exactly. And of course, if you want to, you can also support us through Patreon at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries.
Yeah, thanks so much. We did get 2 reviews in this week over on Apple Podcasts. First up, Wendy143 in the US gave us a 5-star review, said, just started listening to you guys with the Lovecraft Country episodes. Really appreciate your research and the eye for detail. We looked at the speech that you mentioned last week, and it came from Sun Ra in a movie called Space is the Place. Yes, thanks so much for the review, Wendy, first off. Really nice of you giving us a 5-star review. I did see the scene. There was quite a few people, I think we mentioned on the episode last week, that when we don't know something and we say it on the podcast before the episode comes out, the minute it airs, suddenly everybody knows, and we couldn't find it at all when we were searching on Google. But you're absolutely right. I've seen the speech now for a very interesting looking film from the 70s. But the clip's up on YouTube to have a watch of. But yeah, I was absolutely right. Everybody else seemed to be able to find it, and we couldn't. So
yeah, it was strange for sure. But it was great that we got all the feedback through from the last episode that we did on the podcast, because yeah, we were scratching our heads trying to find out where it came from. And as Derek mentioned, our lovely listeners provided lots of feedback to us on that. So thanks so much, and thank you, Wendy, as well, for your review. Really nice. We also got a second 5-star review from LD, who's in Los Angeles. They say, "Gentlemen, love the podcast. It's very interesting, fun, and informative. Listening to you guys helps me understand each episode better, and also helps to catch some things that I may have missed. Keep up the good work. Thanks, LD from LA." Thanks so much, LD, for that, and really appreciate your review. We hope in some way that we can help people navigate these episodes better, or get a bit of snippets of information. And indeed, I think the lovely community circle that we have feeds back to us as well. Like when we ask for help on certain things, and even if we don't, we get some really nice bits of information in our feedback from the listeners. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, LD. This, as we said before, this podcast was done kind of on a whim when we watched the first episode and went, "This is amazing. We must talk about it." Part of the reason we're podcasting, I'm really enjoying the show overall, but we're learning so much American history stuff that we wouldn't have known before. And when we go into doing our podcast, we like to look up all the information that's been thrown at us in these episodes, things that we may never have heard of before. So it's been a really fascinating show. I'm glad we're helping you to understand it more, while helping ourselves to understand the episode more, really.
Most definitely. But with that, let us get ourselves onto discussing Jig-A-Bobo, which is episode 8 of season 1 of Lovecraft Country.
Yes, let's have a chat about this episode. First off, just to comment on the title. I know it's based on a racist term, but obviously the reference there is to Emmet Till, whose middle name is Bobo, or was called Bobo by his friends. This is the kid that's on display in Chicago after being murdered. We met him earlier on in the season, called out that it was a real life tragedy that happened in America back in the 50s, and it's been connected and wrapped into the show here. But that's the reference that's in this episode from the title. Episode was directed by showrunner Misha Green, also teleplay written by Misha Green and Iahoma Ofordir. Really interesting episode, as we said. There's so much going on with all of the characters being involved, so really cool to have Misha Green once again keeping her stamp on every episode with the rest of the writers' room. So really interesting. First time I've seen anything from Iahoma. I don't actually recognize any of the credits for her previous work, but really good work in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, same here. I don't really know much about her either. I know, in just looking up, she did a TV show, Life, Love and Hollywood, but after that, this is our first exposure to Iahoma. Really good to see this great kind of ensemble script coming together between her and Misha Green as well.
John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the episode?
Sure. Following the murder of Emmet Bobo Till, tensions run high in Southside Chicago. Dee goes missing as she slips away from Emmet's funeral. As Atticus, Montrose, Leti and Ruby search for her, she is found by Captain Lancaster, who asks her about the Orary, Hippolyta, and then curses her. As she tries to find Atticus, Dee is stalked by 2 creepy girls intent on killing her. Elsewhere, Atticus is reminded of his death and future, with both the arrival of Jaya at Leti's house and as he opens up to his father about the rift in time and space. Tink knows Leti is pregnant with his son, and both he and Montrose attempt a protection spell to ensure his survival for his son. However, as the police led by Captain Lancaster turn up at Leti's house to get the Orary, only then does Atticus understand that the spell worked, as he unknowingly unleashes a shoggoth surprise on Lancaster and his men. Meanwhile, Dee's curses catches up with her.
Nice little shout out in the synopsis there to our friends over at the Double P Podcast Network and their show Shoggoth Surprise, also covering Lovecraft Country. Nice one, John.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah, really interesting stuff. I love that we got so many answers in this episode. You know, they just simply one of the big ones that popped out to me was getting an answer so quickly about the book that Atticus brought back from what we now know is the future, his travel through the dimensions of time and space. That he's actually brought back a book written by his son, who he's going to name George Freeman after his uncle, who died at the beginning of the series. So really interesting to wrap it all up there. I thought it was an alternate dimension where George may have lived a longer life and had a better life potentially, but lovely references in here. As I said before, the previous episodes, I have read about half of the book. I stopped because it was so close to the TV show here, but I love the reference to all the things that are changed for the TV show. That's the conversation that Tick is having with Montrose, saying to him, the book is different because it's a different reality. He tells him all the things that have been changed for the TV show, which I think is a great insider reference. That's a nice little knowing nod, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Really good fun. John, where do you want to start with our discussion about this episode?
It is Dee's Curse by Captain Lancaster. And, first off, I really want to give a shout out to Jada Harris, who plays Diana Freeman in this. I thought she played this episode so well. And again, another episode where another character gets a major billing here. And I think in this episode, Dee has that to some degree, even though it is a bit more of an ensemble piece, because we really focus on her. I just thought her effectively her guile, her tenacity, her bravery was really just so well portrayed here by Jada Harris. And given the curse that had been put on her, from Captain Lancaster, I just thought she played it so well.
Yeah.
And
that scene itself, though, was just tough to watch, but she just portrayed it so well. And there's so much strength. Once again, another female character in this show where they give so much strength to that. At that moment where she confronts Captain Lancaster, and effectively is right in his face telling him, I will not bow to what it is you want me to do, no matter what's going on. It was just so good to watch. It's a great performance there.
It really, really was. And mainly because she was given an out from the curse here. I love that she gets the jibe in at his deputy saying the name's Hippolyta and it's Greek. Because the deputy was thinking it was some weird African name. So clearly doesn't understand, the ancient, literature of the Greeks. Or anything else. Exactly. Culturally closed off, shall we say. She's given the way out by Captain Lancaster that, he will stop the curse, if, she helps him get inside Leti's house in order to, I presume, get the orrery back that he's been looking for all this time. And she throws that back in his face as well. And I love her parting shout, which is, and this place stinks in here. So you can only imagine that whatever is still being held in the closet there, chained up, is really beginning to fester and rot and stink. So I'm now really curious as to what is happening in that closet to the Frankenstein man that's chained up, for sure. I probably don't want to look behind the door, but nonetheless, my curiosity it will get the better of me, and I really hope it gets the better of the show, and they show probably some kind of decaying corpse behind there, certainly if it is putting out that whiff. But I think let's roll back a bit. That first moment, we see Dee being kind of out of sorts, not wanting to go and see Emmet and him lying in the church. We get reference from Ruby and Leti about the bravery of his family, allowing everyone to see what the murderers did to him. To really show the brutality, the callousness that happened. But you can see that Dee really is kind of, distraught, sort of and upset to the point where she doesn't want to do that, and she slips away.
There's an interesting discussion, really, isn't there, between Montrose and Tick about that, where he's kind of saying to her, well, she's going to have to go through it at some time, so she might as well go through it now, because no matter what happens at some point in the future, she's going to see one of her friends murdered or killed by somebody else, basically.
I know, which is just
so tragic.
A weird reality, isn't it? I suppose, and something that just shouldn't be anyone's normality. But yeah, it's, she runs away. She, is caught though, or she is traced and tracked down by Captain Lancaster in this alleyway, who initially are questioning her about her mum, and then are curious to see what she knows about magic. And all of a sudden, he begins to incant, and we see maggots coming from the earth, flies, and he spits on her, spits on his hand and wipes it on her forehead and curses her. And ultimately,
in these COVID times, that takes on
exactly, it really does. But what we see then is that, and after that, from that point onwards, she's cursed. I think immediately afterwards, she's trying to find Atticus, because there's a few things going on, and we hear it from Montrose, because her dad has died, her mum is missing, her best friend now has been murdered, and all of this is pressing and weighing heavily upon her. And she's in part wanting to find out where her mother is, and in part now, after the meeting with Captain Lancaster in the alleyway, wanting to somehow understand what is going on. But all the while, we see that Dee is being effectively stalked by these two girls that are, they've got one sock up, one sock down, they've got crazily long nails, they've got the ribbons in the hair, and it all comes from a book titled Uncle Tom's Cabin, back in her bathroom at her home, when Montrose is trying to sort of reason with her to unlock the door and come out after he's found her. But she escapes back through the window, and again, this fear coming from Uncle Tom's cabin is what begins to stalk her, the two girls that are on the front of this particular cover.
Yes, the Uncle Tom's Cabin, a very famous book from the 1800s in the US, has a lot of racial stereotypes in the book itself. My read on this, after doing a little bit of research, after watching the episode, is that effectively it's a reasonably free girl. That is Dee. She's reasonably free to do what she wants to. She's a real thinker. She's a real, just like her mother, she's very strong, very intelligent kid. And it feels like they have created these monsters, effectively, which are things from a past that she never wants to live. Almost, she's being chased down by the stereotypes, effectively, of the world, almost. That's kind of the way it feels to me, and that's kind of what they've done in the episode. It is also terrifying. It feels like The Ring. Remember that movie where, you get a call and then you get stalked by the monster and you can't do anything at all to stop, I was wondering about you, John, because I know you're a big horror fan, but there's particular horror things that you don't like very much, that you find really terrifying. Kids being one of those things in movies. Horror kids, scary kids,
Yeah, horror kids, creepy kids, pumpkin men, generally, I think are pretty creepy. And I have to say, these sequences of Dee effectively being cursed, and that curse being the thing that she maybe most rails against, or is afraid of, or hates, and it's the idea, I suppose, from Uncle Tom's Cabin about being stereotyped with these stereotypical views and descriptions of colored people from Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was an author by Harriet Beecher Stowe, and ultimately it was an anti-slavery novel, but the descriptions within Harriet's book are ones that are, pretty negative, to be honest. But it also, the anti-slavery message, made it a very big seller back in that time. And it is said to have helped lay the groundwork for the Civil War, being one of the books, of which the other was the Bible, used by abolitionists to show the evil and the barbarity of slavery, that principled and moral case against slavery.
Yeah.
So that it's kind of really interesting that there's that dichotomy with this book, I suppose. These kind of opposing kind of influences as to how it shaped personally people of color from the pretty awful stereotypical descriptions of colored people in it, but also at the time it was used as a book and a basis of anti-slavery and abolition. So yes, that's really, really interesting. I thought. Indeed, it's supposedly said that Abraham Lincoln, when he met Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote the book, says, "You're the little lady who started this great war,"
right. Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's this whole sequence of her trying to escape the two girls after her, I found really affecting. I think one of the,
well. It reminded me of Us as well, the Jordan Peele film.
Exactly.
Where the family are being stalked. There's just a certain movement about the kids, in that movie particularly, how they move and how their arms move and how their legs move. You can definitely tell that the characters are dancers, at least, that, in this show, the actresses who play the girls, definitely dancers. They have that movement about them. So it's like an eerie move that couldn't possibly be from a human.
Exactly. And it's also that they, to an extent, break the fourth wall in this show as well. So looking directly at camera, it's as though these movements are to camera. And in fact, at the very end, where effectively Dee is making her last stand, I kind of wrote in my notes, Dee's Alamo. One of them, as it comes into the door from outside, looks back out of the door straight at camera and smiles and pulls the tongue. So there's a lot of breaking the fourth wall here, which is also very creepy when you've got creepy kids doing strange movements and have fairly lethal looking nails, which I suspect could slice through flesh pretty easily.
Well,
but for me, one of the really great scenes with this was on the rail line station on the Chicago overhead rail line, and Dee is there waiting for the train to come, sees them coming up the stairs in those weird movements, and then gradually coming through the crowd, and Dee trying to escape that. And it's just the camera work as it moves through the crowd, where the two creepy kids are getting closer and closer to Dee, was just really, really good.
It was,
and I loved that. The other one as well is then in the alleyway where she's spying on Captain Lancaster to trail him back to his office and his home, and you just see the two girls in the darkness coming and dancing their way up the alleyway, and I just simply couldn't watch it because I was thinking, what are they going to do? Dee is going to look around and they're going to be there right in the face. And I just did not watch that at all. I had to kind of just scribble notes very quickly and pretend that I wasn't really watching this really freaky little scene. So, I mean, hats off there for sure.
It's a good excuse to not watch something, is writing your notes.
Must write notes.
But I do think that's one of the cool things in the episode, as I mentioned, just the strength of Dee, because she knows they're there all the time. She knows that they're behind her. And especially in the alley, we just don't see her look around because she's like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. As long as I keep clear of them, I'm fine, basically, is the kind of attitude. But just they reach out and their nails get within 2 inches of Dee's back there. That feels like a really, what's going to happen next moment. So that's kind of the major points of Dee there,
and I think just mainly to say that ultimately the two creepy girls catch up with Dee as she's kind of barricaded herself in, I think it's George and Hippolyta's office.
Yeah, garage maybe.
And garage.
Yeah.
And she is hitting them as they come in, but Montrose is also out looking for Dee after she had slipped past him from the bathroom, and just sees her flailing in midair with this huge pipe. It's all in her imagination.
Yeah.
But as he kind of tries to calm her down effectively and hold her, then the girls are scratching at her arms, and you see the blood coming. So
that is the Nightmare on Elm Street moment, as I like to call it.
Yeah, it really is. And it's very much, they do catch up with her. And if it's a question of, do they kill her or not? I got the impression from Captain Lancaster that from his office, after she has basically told him to go run and jump with his deal, that he's like, I don't care about the girl. She will be dead soon enough. So I suspect this could be real dangerous situation for Dee, unless there is something that Montrose can do, or maybe we're going to see Hippolyta return to the fray unexpectedly. So let's just see. But I really hope it's not the end of Diana Freeman for sure.
Absolutely.
Where would we be without those great comics?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. What an awful tragedy for their family over the course of this series. We lost George in the first couple of episodes. Hippolyta's disappeared, and now Dee is effectively being murdered, all because of Tick, basically, is what we're learning in this episode as well. So it kind of takes me on to the other thing I want to talk about to begin with. I think I've just called this protection spells galore for my point for the episode, because it is really interesting that we have so much of this protection spell work that we've been talking about for the last few episodes. That was the whole reason why they were trying to get the Book of Adam, was to put some protection spells on the house, protect everybody, protect all their families, make sure they were kept safe from all the magic that's going on. Whereas in this episode here, we have Tick trying to get magic to protect himself. We have Leti trying to get magic to protect Tick, but it's been refused by Christina. Christina and Leti go and meet up in the church. Leti tries to get her to protect Tick, but she refuses, interestingly. I guess partly because she's already given the magic spell to Tick to do the protection on himself. So is that the reason why she can't protect him, or is she just won't protect him because she's going to, what we learn again in the episode is she's going to kill him to gain immortality in the future. So she can't put a protection spell on him because,
we get, a bit more background from Atticus as he's speaking to Montrose about what happened in through that rift in time and space. So the great thing, as you were saying, we find out that the George Freeman on the cover of the Lovecraft Country book, it is actually his son, and that's why he knows that Leti is pregnant, even though she hasn't said that and told him yet.
Yeah.
But also he then knows that Christina is planning on sacrificing him at the autumnal equinox so that she can, as you say, achieve immortality.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's really interesting. So I wonder if that's the reason why she wouldn't provide actual protection to Tick.
It would seem like a genuine one if she wants to bump him off.
Exactly. Yeah. So what she has provided, though, is protection for Leti, which is why when Captain Lancaster comes to the house to try and take out Leti, she has the bullets bouncing off her, which is very cool.
That was a very cool scene. Yeah.
Also love the return of the house protection that was put on the house, back in episode 4, because Captain Lancaster can't get into the house because he's a magic user. So, loved that kind of bounce back. It felt again like vampires, once again.
Definitely.
It was very cool. But yeah, that moment when you have, Leti almost realizing how good her protection is such a strong moment. You hear Ruby lying on the floor shouting at her going, "Get down," and she just stands up, has the bullets bounced off her like Luke Cage. We have that kind of moment where she's just walking out into the hail of bullets, looking like she's actually going to do some big kind of move now that she is bulletproof, that she's about to do something, but Tick arrives back just at that moment, and the entire police force turn on him, turn all their guns on him, and start pulling triggers, basically. I did not expect that the protection that Christina had given him is the ability to call a shoggoth from below the ground to attack every person in the way. So that was a shocker. I was expecting, a dive from Leti in front of him where she would block.
Yeah, exactly.
The bullets.
I had that as well. But I mean, we see earlier that Montrose and Tick do the spell.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love the fact in this moment where the spell's being done by Montrose, he finishes it with Amen and goes, well, it couldn't hurt, could it? Which is really nice.
It's very funny, but I must say, I don't know whether I'd trust anybody to read a spell to me directly after I've just learned that they are dyslexic and sometimes mix up words when they're reading.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how terrified Tick was, but I was kind of going, is he going to turn him into a rabbit or something?
Well, that's it. And there's a nice little moment as well, just after he's said to Tick that he's dyslexic and Tick goes, are there any more secrets that you're keeping from me? And of course we all know that potentially he's George's son. So,
so it's like, well, you're not my son, maybe?
It could be something that he brings out. You also get that great moment as well that you often do in horror, where you do an incantation, do a spell, expecting that the wind is going to start whipping up, the skies go black and maybe his eyes glow, and flash, just as he gains this power. And it's just Montrose and Tick there going, do you feel any different? Well, I don't. Do we even know if it works? And then the moment we know it works, it is as the shoggoth, surprise, comes up out of the ground to stop the bullet. It's not Leti doing the hero dive in front of him. It's a shoggoth who then really goes to town on Captain Lancaster's men and Captain Lancaster.
Absolutely. Well, yes, I was trying to work out whether we saw him definitely be eaten, but I think we did.
We do. We see a shoggoth on him, and he's shooting at him, but of course the shoggoth isn't being affected by it, and the shoggoth rips off the arm with the gun, and you just see that hand lying there. So yeah, he's definitely dead. You get it's a great sequence of events, just with police officers being sort of impaled on the tail of the shoggoth, their heads being sort of gnawed off and shook off by the shoggoth. So this was a really great moment in the episode.
Absolutely. So the Tick has a pet shoggoth to send after his enemies if anybody's attacking him. That's kind of cool, isn't it?
That is true. Not that it really felt as though Tick had ultimate control on that shoggoth coming out. It seemed like the shoggoth responded to the fact that Tick was in danger more than anything. But then right at the end, when the shoggoth is in front of Tick, Letty's behind him, and he's got his hand up to stop the shoggoth, probably from maybe getting Leti, and his hand kind of just rests on it, which felt like, just petting his pet dog or something.
It felt like, what's the Harry Potter one where they did something like that, where you can just calm down an animal or creature that that stands in front of you like that. But of course, we do know that Christina has her whistle. Christina has the ability to control shoggoths, because we saw that right back in episode 1. So a good protection that she can provide to Tick, but also can break that protection herself really easily whenever she needs to. So I think that's the reason why that specific type of protection is what's been supplied to Tick here. So
for sure.
Yeah. One of the things just to mention in this part of the episode, there was some great conversations between Montrose and Tick throughout this episode as they start to maybe not rebuild their relationship even, but just as Tick starts to learn more about his father and learn more about his father's past, he asks some questions that are important for him to know the answer to. He wants to know whether Montrose, being gay, did he ever cheat on his mother? Montrose interestingly says, well, he never did. He never acted on it, but he always had the impulses. But what was interesting, what I really liked about the conversation, was he made the decision to live his life in a straight world with a family because he was terrified of what would happen to him if he didn't do that.
Yeah.
He says, I would either end up in jail, I would end up swinging from a tree, or I would end up dead in a toilet somewhere. So I chose to live my life as a straight person in this hidden behind a family, effectively, because the world out there is absolutely terrifying for a gay person in the 40s and 50s, effectively.
And especially a gay coloured person
Yeah.
as well. And, well, yeah, because he says, I chose life instead of an asylum or even jail.
Yeah.
He gives this story of a preacher who was caught with another man.
Yeah.
And who was taken off, had some form of lobotomy. He says he's missing half his brain.
Yeah.
And he said he realized he didn't want that. And so, as you say, decided to choose a life, he says. I chose a life rather than asylum or jail or something else.
Exactly.
That was really interesting. And I think it was nice having Tick and his father reconnect again in some way. I'm glad they didn't just leave it after the last episode where he calls him a faggot.
Absolutely.
That there was some kind of reconnection between the two.
Yeah, definitely. But again, I'm not sure whether Tick's ever going to be able to accept who Montrose is and forgive all the horrible things Montrose has done. We've mentioned this before. Montrose isn't a lovely character or anything like that. It's just his sexuality happens to be that he's gay. That's it. It doesn't make him a great person just because of that. And they're certainly not letting that go. But I do like that they have those conversations so Tick can actually find out more about the man that he thought he knew so well, I suppose. So I think that's really good. It's also another reference in the show again to how things change us in our lives, the experiences that we go through, how they change us, because Montrose says that story that he talks about the priest was something that happened to him when he was 8 years old, and that formed his decisions for the rest of his life, effectively. Yeah. So I think that's quite interesting. Another touch in there in Lovecraft Country of a character who's had an experience in their past which changes them forever, like Hippolyta, not being able to keep the name that she actually gave to the meteor. Somebody else got that name, so that changed her life forever as to who she became in the future. So seeing that with Montrose was interesting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
We should mention Gia being in the episode here because Gia had been in the past a character on the other end of the phone, effectively, until she got her own episode, which was set in the past of Atticus's life. We see her here. She is now in San Francisco for 15 minutes, I guess. And then she's kicked out of the house. But I wish there'd been a little bit more to her time in the episode, because it feels like she got there and went, I'm here to tell you once again, Tick, that you're going to die. And he goes, well, I know that. You've already told me that. I'm not going to die. Do you have any further information at all? Any further details that you can help with? And she goes, no. And he's like, all right, get out then.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we learn that she actually describes what a Kimiho is with the seven-tailed fox, and that at least in, say, Western culture, that's the equivalent of a succubus. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of, she arrived, and there was a great moment where Tick asks, why are you here? And it's Leti that answers on behalf of Jaya with, because she loved you. And then that, effectively kicks Tick out, but then is immediately asking for him not to go.
Yeah.
I felt like that whole scene was a little bit rushed, as you say, whether it was for Jaya, and the length of time that she was in, the episode, with that scene, and just the very quick change around from Leti effectively kicking Tick out of the house and asking him to go. And then as soon as she realizes what he's going to do, which is he wants to cast a spell effectively to protect the future.
Exactly.
So that he doesn't die, and he has time with his son, George. That then she doesn't want him to leave, and she wants to be part of that to help him.
Yeah.
And
I took the switch as if...
So it was very quick.
Yeah, but I took the switch as it being, get out of my house, I'm sick of you bringing your ex-girlfriend here kind of thing. And then finding out that he's going to go and do that spell makes it sound like he could die. So I think that felt like the switch was like, get out of my house, but I don't want you to die, so stay here and let me help you.
Because mainly she doesn't mean for him to be gone from her house.
Absolutely.
It's a heat of the moment thing, but it did kind of feel a little speedy, should we say, I think.
Yeah.
I think one of the other interesting moments within this episode was Ruby as well. We see her changing back to Hillary and having sex with William, and we have a really interesting conversation here between Ruby and then Christina once they've changed back. I mean, first off, the scene of them having sex where, as they're climaxing, Ruby is or Hillary is going and Ruby is returning, it was kind of like, okay, you know, there's angry sex, there's makeup sex, and now we have bloody transformation sex. But we have this really interesting conversation from Ruby saying to Christina, you know, do you feel anything with respect to what was done to Emmet Till, Bobo? You know, she goes, I'm heartbroken, I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm mourning a sweet little boy that was taken from us. And she says she took that potion to escape from being black at this time. And Christina is no, she's really has no empathy here for how Ruby is feeling, and nor for she doesn't feel anything about the justice that won't ever be received by Emmet's family with respect to the killers of Bobo. So I thought that was really, really interesting, mainly because you then actually see Christina being killed in the same way that Bobo was. It's a really graphic description and illustration of what happened to this young child through the death of Christina. I think that's how it was meant to do, rather than showing the actual death of a child in such a brutal and graphic way. Absolutely. They do it through Christina here, through Christina Braithwaite. And I have to say, you know, effectively beaten, shot, with barbed wire tied around their neck to a cotton jig, which is then dumped into the water where she drowns. And Christina comes back out because she has magic. But she's screaming. And it's just that actually maybe Ruby did, pardon the pun, get under the skin of Christina here. You know, maybe Christina exploring that death to try and feel something. Maybe. So it was kind of interesting, but very, very graphic. And of course, because it was such a horrendous thing. I mean, shame for sure.
Absolutely. It also shows you can get absolutely anything that you want if you have the amount of money that Christina has, because she hired these two guys to kill her that way as well. So, and they do it, and they go ahead with it, and then, you know, effectively kick her into the river and go, why? I don't know why anybody would want to die like that, basically. But they did it for the money, basically. So,
yeah, exactly.
Wow. But yeah, I'm so glad that on this TV show they've made the decision to do it this way, to show you the brutality of what happened to Emmet Till through Christina experiencing it, because they've shown a lot in this show. They've done a lot in this show. And I don't think I could have watched if they'd actually shown what happened to Emmet Till happened to the actor playing him in the show. So I'm so glad they decided to do it that way, showing you the brutality of it, but not visited on a kid of the same age as of Emmet Till. So yeah, that was a good choice. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think then the only other thing between about Ruby and Christina is Ruby actually tells Leti about Christina, so that is now very much out there in the open.
Do you know, I love when this happens on TV shows, especially when you've only got 10 episode shows like this, when finally you get an episode like this where everybody's now in on all the secrets, right? Everybody knows. Letty's told Ruby that she's even pregnant and everything, you know, so they know everything about each other now. Montrose and Tick seem to be now have all the information that they need, all the information that they needed to know. So everybody now has all of the information. It's not just the audience, us watching them, knowing bits about each of their stories. So, even down to Jaya being there and telling all the story of who she was and what she did to Montrose, you know, that's all out in the open now. So I do like that in shows when they do that. So yeah, you're good to call that out. I thought it was a great conversation actually between Ruby and Leti. Felt really sisterly of the two of them.
Yeah.
Having that conversation. Just one thing we didn't mention in the conversation between Christina and Ruby, just that accusation from Christina that Ruby's lying to herself, that Ruby's telling herself the reason why she chose to take this potion was to escape the shame she felt for what was going on. And Christina saying she's lying to herself. That's not the reason she took it. She has a power now. She uses magic to get what she wants now. And that's why she took the potion, because she's powerful, effectively.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really interesting conversation. I don't know whether she's entirely right or whether she was striking back at Ruby, like you say, because she hit a chord with Christina, maybe got under her skin, and maybe she's striking back at Ruby by the way that she wants to strike back at her. But I did think it was an interesting kind of discussion or observation, and even maybe Ruby does possibly believe that Christina may be right in some senses.
Yeah, but, possibly.
But I thought it was a very interesting one. Very interesting. Anything else that we haven't talked about on the episode? I think that's most of the things I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about as well. I think we've kind of covered the Uncle Tom's Cabin book, that signifier with respect to the two girls chasing after Dee. Yeah. I suppose the only other call out again, the one place where I did jump quite heavily and let out a girly scream was when Dee finds Woody actually parked up outside Letty's house, and one of the girls pops right up there on the other side of the car through the window. So yeah, that was where my heart stopped for a little moment, for sure. My little weak heart.
Your lungs didn't, though. Your lungs just started up right there.
Yes, and had to take 5. Yeah.
I just need to pause for a second and walk away, says John. Absolutely. Yeah, really interesting episode. What do you think of it overall, John? Do you have a rating for this?
Yeah, I loved this. I was really glad that it started to pull some of these threads together through from the previous episodes. I give this 4.5 protection spells out of 5.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it sort of weaving these different storylines together. The only one maybe missing here was Hippolyta. Yes, to some extent.
She was definitely present. They
exactly.
Mentioned her a couple of times. It was interesting. She was gone for a week as well. So she's been gone for a whole week since the incident happened. I think they kind of referenced the fact that, when Tick went, he met the same woman that, Hippolyta met. She gave him the book and pushed him back through the rift, effectively. So he was only in there for, however long, 20 or 30 minutes, effectively. He didn't go on this massive journey like Hippolyta's gone on. So potentially that massive journey is taking a week, and she's still in those moments now, potentially. Yeah. Don't know how time works. Will she return to the exact moment again? Probably not, because it's been a week and she's been gone, but we don't know how long she's going to be away for, effectively, because she's having this adventure over on the other side of the rift. So, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was. And I just thought this was, really a great episode. Great scares. Nice return of the shoggoth, in that heroic shoggoth moment to protect Atticus. I loved the creepy girls, forming in Dee's mind from the Uncle Tom's Cabin. I think as I say, the weaving together of these storylines now was just really nicely done here.
Yeah.
And it was a very challenging episode as well, certainly around with poor Emmet Till, and just the shock of that death, and it being represented through Christina doing the same graphic methods on herself to try and get that empathy, I suppose, to feel something on the death of Bobo as challenged by Ruby.
Yeah.
This had a lot in it, and it was really well and expertly done. So 4.5 protection spells out of 5 from me.
Absolutely. Excellent. Yeah, totally agree with you. And really, really good episode. Oh, yeah, we didn't mention the other fourth wall breaking moment. I mentioned earlier on there were a couple of references to the book, the original book, and what's been changed. We also had a moment where Tick references how the book ends, which is how he dies, right? He references how he dies. Have they, like the Count of Monte Cristo thing, have they told us this is how the book ends, the show is going to end differently? I haven't read the end of the book, as I've mentioned before, so I'm wondering if they've kind of gone, I know you think you know what's going to happen at the end of the story, through the character of Tick to the audience, but we're going to do things differently this time. I'm wondering if that's why they left that into the episode, or why they had that conversation between Montrose and Tick. I thought it was a really interesting one. So I've read the book. At the end of it, it says this happens, but that's not going to happen, kind of thing, because it can't go that way. He can't have told you the end of a show that still has 2 more episodes left to go. So, so I just thought that was interesting just to pull out as well. Excellent stuff. That's our discussion for Lovecraft Country episode 8. Let's get on to some of your wonderful feedback.
Yes, we have some feedback through on email. If you want to send us feedback that way, you can just contact us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. So first off, Sarah Muthawa emailed us to say, "Hi guys, love the podcast covering Lovecraft Country. I've read the book and the show is amazing. You guys are doing a great job with your episodes. If you haven't found it yet, the speech towards the end of episode 7 is from Sun Ra. If you Google his name plus some text from the speech, you can learn all about him. Best wishes, Sarah from Virginia in the USA." Thanks so much, Sarah. Again, thanks for sending in the reference. It was really good to kind of put that in context with the Sun Ra film there from the 70s. So, yeah, it was really good because it was such an interesting speech I found from the last episode. So, yeah, it was really good. And thanks so much, for the feedback, on the podcast. We're glad you're enjoying it as well as Lovecraft Country and the book. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Sarah. We also got a message in on Facebook from Matt, over on the Double P podcast, giving us that information as well about Sun Ra. Over on Facebook, Donald Dennis says, episode 7 was another very different episode. A bunch more weird tales and wish fulfillment than Lovecraftian horror normally engages in, but it was a well done episode. That's really interesting, isn't it? Because one of the, I suppose, the almost misconceptions of the show, because it's called Lovecraft Country, even from the beginning. I remember the comments from people going, you know, who Lovecraft was. He was a horrible person. Don't base a show on him. But it's based on a book, based on the type of horror that's out there. The book definitely has a bunch of different styles of horror within it, much like the TV show. So it's not just specifically Lovecraftian type of horror that's in the book. There's loads of other types of horror in there, but the concept is Lovecraft Country, a scary place, effectively. So we still, we still haven't seen Cthulhu, have a presence on the show itself. So.
Yeah, not a tentacle in sight.
Just, except the first episode we saw in Tick's Dream, we saw the Cthulhu monster there, but wondering if the massive Cthulhu will appear at the end of the season, and that's how the show ends.
Yeah, who knows?
That's what Christina calls instead of immortality for herself.
That could Cthulhu or something. It could be that for sure. Also over on Facebook, Angie Arhouse says, "I love this show. It challenges us by giving us so much to think and talk about, stuns us with its beautiful visuals and acting, creating new worlds and stories, and teaches us. This was a 5-star episode of TV. I honestly thought of Hippolyta as a minor player in the show, who had kind of faded into the background after that first episode. However, it seems there is so much more to her that has been hidden or made small, as she says. She has many facets and talents and has figured out the orrery. She may be the key to it all. I had to add that I had the same first thought about Leti as Derek when she was repelled by the garlic in the food. Is she a vampire?
There you go.
I'm still kind of hoping this is true, but they are probably going with the pregnancy storyline."
Yeah, I know. It's it's a bit tropey, I suppose, but I do love the vampire idea.
It plays on exactly that with the audience. So in that sense, it's great tropiness.
Absolutely. I do love the shout out in the discussion between herself and Christina at the church, where she says, I didn't used to be a praying kind of person or a religious kind of person, but then, I died and came back to life. So I kind of see that side of it now, which I thought was really interesting.
Exactly. Finally, Angie says, "I wanted to shout out the hairstyling in this episode, and all of them really, which added so much to the story, especially that magnificent futuristic afro."
Stunning.
Absolutely stunning, Angie. I can't agree more. I think the I Am robot lady with the, as you say, the futuristic afro was just amazing. And I totally agree with you about this show. It is challenging, it's educational, as well as being fantastic storytelling, the visuals, and the acting, the production, all of that, the direction, the writing. It's so good. Absolutely. I mean, I think, I have learnt an awful lot from this TV show, and that in itself is really, really important. And yet it is also great entertainment. It's really nicely woven together all these different motives of the show, really. So absolutely loved last week's episode with Hippolyta for sure.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much for that, Andrew. Yeah, one other thing that I learned this week, since you're talking about learning, John, on the official podcast for Lovecraft Country, I learned that the futuristic robot lady has an actual name. I never saw it mentioned on screen. I don't know whether I checked the credits or whether the credits just didn't have her named, but the character's called Beyond Say.
Okay.
So,
not I am. I've been calling it I am. Yeah, okay.
That's the words that she says is I am when she arrives, so you think that's her name. But Beyond Say is the name of the character.
Okay.
Which I think is also quite cool.
Yeah, there. Great stuff.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Angie.
Yeah, thanks, Angie.
Will be over on Twitter just pointed out another piece that we missed last week in episode 7. The character of Bessie Stringfield appears in episode 7. We were wondering what it was when Hippolyta's on her drive having that wonderful freedom moment, effectively, and we see a biker pull up beside her, smile at her, wave, and drive on. That's actually a real life lady called Bessie Stringfield. Did get into the Motorbikers Hall of Fame, effectively, because of the things that she did back in the 50s and 40s. She traveled all across America on her own, on a motorbike, in those times, effectively, as totally free as she possibly could be. That's kind of the representation of exactly where Hippolyta would want to get to, a person like Bessie Stringfield. So really cool spot there. Thanks very much, Will.
Yeah, thank you so much, Will. Another great little bit of information that, we wouldn't have picked up on. I wouldn't have known that significance other than in that scene, seeing Hippolyta smile and see the satisfaction of this other woman traveling on her own, free in that sense. Exactly. So, really good spot. Thanks so much, Will. Okay. Also, just to remind everyone, if you want, you can send us comments through on Twitter. Our handle is @tvpodindustries. And of course, over on Facebook, you can come and join us over on the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Excellent. As we mentioned before, you can also email us to feedback@TV Podcast Industries. You can email us your thoughts in text form, or you can record an MP3 of your thoughts, any kind of recording, and email it to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, just like our wonderful friend Steve Brown.
Hey, I don't even know where to start. Hey guys, it's Steve. I'm definitely going to have to watch that one again, but a couple of quick thoughts. What a trippy episode. So many things in there that I don't understand. I'm sure, hopefully when I listen to you guys' podcast, maybe I'll listen to the podcast first and then rewatch it again to maybe figure out what's going on totally. But, one quick thing, and I'm sure you guys may or may not talk about it, or, at the end, Tick, it looked like he grabbed a copy of the book that the show is based on off the table. I'm going to have to watch it again to catch that for sure, but it really looked like that's what he had. There was a copy of the book that this show is based on, and he grabbed it and when he ran out of the room. And this is the first time I watched the sneak peek for episode 8, and it looks like the cops are going to come for Dee because of the comic book found under the other one. I wonder if we're going to get to see what Atticus saw on the other side of the portal. See what he experienced. I wonder if we're going to get to find out what the cop experienced that got thrown through the portal. Maybe not. Maybe it's something, but wow. I'm still, that one's going to have to be watched again. Okay. Talk to you later.
Excellent, Steve. Yeah, that was definitely a double watch episode.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope we helped. We may not have predicted exactly the outcome of everything that happened in the episode, but I think we got a good understanding of the episode after we watched it the second time. We were definitely wrong about the book, what the significance was, and we didn't have to wait long for the explanation of what happened to Tick when he disappeared into the portal. At least we got it all explained in this episode, effectively. So it was only 10 minutes. Away, kind of thing.
And I think he came through the rift with the book as well. It's just when he was trying to sort of turn the machine off or whatever he was trying to do, he had the book on the side of the control panel.
That's
so
right.
then he picked it up again from the panel as he ran to escape the sirens that you could hear in the background.
Exactly. Yeah, excellent. Thanks so much, as always, for your feedback, Steve.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. Our final bit of feedback comes through from Parthenia Locklear. She goes, "Hi guys, I am a listener from Durham, North Carolina. I've become a recent fan. I watch Lovecraft and I listen to the HBO Lovecraft Country podcast. I then discuss the show with my friends and add the podcast input as well because my friends don't listen to it. Then we jump from that to the boys. So because I want to be more all-knowing in our jokes and conversations, I decided that I needed to find a podcast on the boys, which led me to listening to your podcast. I love it. You guys definitely point out things that I miss. Thanks so much." So as I was listening to your podcast on the boys, it then starts playing the review on Lovecraft Country. I was pleasantly surprised. I absolutely love your take on the show.
Excellent.
The HBO version is great as well, but different. I am a Black American woman and absolutely love all things sci-fi. I was raised in New York City, but my adult life has been in the South. I can relate to many of the things that are discussed about Lovecraft Country. The perspective from your angle is amazing and also enlightening. Thank you for not being afraid to respectfully dig in on tough subjects. Anyways, all of this to say thanks, new fan and listener over here. Keep up the good work. I'm so excited to rewatch some shows just so that I can hear your podcast, such as Good Omens and The Witcher. Thanks, Parthenia. Thanks so much, Parthenia, and welcome on board to the podcast that we do. It's great that you found us, and it's really, really cool to get your thoughts on what we're doing. I think, and we're glad we can provide some insight into the shows as well for you. We really hope that's the case, and as well that we just, as you say, dig into not only the show but some of the subject matter that is brought up with it. And I think for myself and Derek, anyway, we really have that kind of look on all the shows that we do. Some of them, it might just be around the comics, and others that are absolutely touching on some of the issues or things that are going on in society more generally. We'll certainly sort of speak about them. Anyway.
Absolutely. Try our best to cover them and, hopefully respectfully dig in when there's a tough subject there. But thanks so much. Really great to hear from you, Parthenia. And a North Carolinian residence, John.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Awesome. I lived in North Carolina for a couple of years, up in Calabash and Myrtle Beach kind of area. So I know Carolina really well, actually. So delighted to hear from another Carolinian resident. Excellent. Thanks so much, Parthenia. I'm glad you're listening to both shows as well, because we've been asking for weeks what's the crossover between Lovecraft Country and the boys, and we're kind of thinking, is it only us that are watching both shows every week? But clearly not. So that's excellent to hear. And thanks everybody else for your feedback. Thanks once again for joining us for this episode. Really good to speak with you about Lovecraft Country. Oh, so excited for the next episode of the show.
Yes, we'll be back next week for the next episode of Lovecraft Country, Season 1, Episode 9, Rewind 1921.
Ooh,
yes,
we're going to Tulsa.
I think we may be going to Tulsa, indeed. Yeah, so interesting stuff for sure. Can't wait to see that, to be honest.
Yeah, because we had the discussion before that George Montrose and Montrose's wife, Tick's mom, were all in Tulsa together back in 1921. So that will be very interesting to see that on screen.
Yes, and we haven't said it on the podcast, but it is just to say that if Jair's timeline and the death of Tick happens on the autumnal equinox, it was mentioned in this episode, there's 5 days remaining. So yes, this rewind to 1921, really intriguing to see where and how it takes us to Tulsa, I would assume, as you do.
Or has Hippolyta gone back there?
Yeah, so cannot wait for the next episode.
Excellent. The penultimate episode of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're also finishing our Boys coverage this week. Episode 8 of The Boys airs on Friday this week. If you've been following us for that, thank you very much. If you haven't, you can go and check out all of our thoughts for The Boys over on tvpodcastindustries.com, or just look up TV Podcast Industries on any good or evil podcast catcher, and you'll get all the episodes of the stuff that we are recording about. So thank you so much for joining us once again. Talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, fellow Dreadfuls, for joining us. It's great discussing these episodes of Lovecraft Country with you. But remember, keep watching, keep listening, and with those scary girls coming, keep looking over your shoulder.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.